Welcome back, everybody. Play some Bare Naked Ladies because we are 1 week away from the draft, and I was actually proud of that. That right there. Maybe some people wouldn't
What a
be.
cold open. I love
What
it.
a cold open. Jordan is in Vegas. He is enjoying WrestleMania week, and he will be at Mania. So lucky bastard. So Kevin Fielder is back with us, the Adam Schefter of Manhattan, Kansas. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. We finally have good weather here, so I don't have
Yeah.
to wear sweatpants and hoodies all day. Finally dust out the shorts for a couple of weeks here.
Yeah. Dude, Pennsylvania's weird. We had 80 degrees one day, and then it went to 30. Then a torrential downpour, and it's supposed to be 80 degrees this weekend. So I've experienced every single season in a week.
Yeah, we have
So
it's been like 90 today, and it's going to be like pretty hot tomorrow, and then we get down to like 54 over like 2 straight days with like rain and hail, and then we're just back to like 85 and nothing happened. It's so stupid.
yeah, our Twitter admin did not like the Bare Naked Ladies cold open. I thought it was clever. Kev liked it, I think. So
I loved it. I think that was awesome.
So you got to just keep having fun. But yeah, Kev, we are 1 week away from the draft. As you and I were talking about beforehand, I just want to get to the draft. I do not care about anything else. And of course, we have news come out. Yes, what was it? Yesterday, 2 days ago, that the Dolphins are looking to trade Jalen Ramsey. And my response was basically, okay, let's see what we can get. I saw you on Discord, and your response was a little less understanding.
My issue was not with trading Jalen Ramsey, because I think that if there's going to come a point where Jalen Ramsey needs to get moved, the best time is probably now for that. Given that his value has not completely tanked, he still has years under his contract. There will likely be interested teams in him. The confusing part to me is that if you knew this was a possibility, and Chris Greer's comments afterwards sort of implied that they had been discussing this for a while, right? Like, this is not something that just spurned on them in a cold sweat at 4 a.m. They're like, we have to trade Jalen Ramsey. Like, we have to trade him. Like, why not commit more resources during free agency at a corner? Because you're now looking at a situation where your starting cornerbacks next year are Storm Duck, Kader Kohu, and Artie Burns. Like, I don't know who that third corner even is.
I don't think he's on the roster yet.
And like, that's the concerning part for me, is maybe this is like perfect world thinking, but I am not a fan of going into the draft and knowing that you have to draft a starter at a position. I'm a believer that like the draft is used to draft prospects who you think can develop and are valuable players. And so like, to some degree, they've handcuffed themselves to one or potentially two picks in the top in their first 4 picks have to be corners, right? Like, there's no other way around that, I think. And so to me, it feels backwards to be like a week before the draft, be like, yeah, now we're looking to trade him. But we don't have another corner on roster.
Yeah. So my first thought when I saw that was they sniffed around, and the reason they're willing to do this is they like the what they're seeing they could get for him. I don't think we're getting a third rounder for him. We traded a third rounder, but if we get a third, like if we get a fourth, I'm happy with that. If we get a third, the third or more, I'm ecstatic.
Yeah, I don't know what the value looks like now. I think a fourth is probably like where you're at logically. Maybe you get like a conditional pick next year, depending on if a team makes a deep playoff run. But like, I do think, and I do wonder if maybe this is a situation where someone had thrown this around. I don't know if this is the worst idea. Maybe you call the 49ers and see if you can move up a few spots in the draft with that first pick and then get a fourth or a fifth as well, right? Like, maybe the value there is not necessarily getting one pick for Jalen Ramsey, but using that pick plus 13 to move up a few spots in the draft. You know, maybe you move up to 10 or 11. You just sort of get yourself in front of a few teams who may be interested in a corner, and then, or in a position that you like. I don't know if it's corner, maybe it's defensive tackle, maybe it's offensive line. Like, we don't know for sure, but like, maybe you get ahead of a few guys and then you start to look from there. But I don't think you're getting a third for him. I don't think the value is what the value was a few years ago, right? Like, I think you're going to get less, which is fine. If it's a fourth, I have no issues with it. I think you can still get valuable players in this year's draft in the fourth round. But, like, I don't know if the pick is even in this year's draft. I think there's a very good possibility with just the way the captains work that this is a trade that happens in the summer. And I think the telling part would be how these next few weeks go for Miami. If they draft a few corners, if they go out and sign one of the corners left on the open market, when comp picks don't, or when signings don't factor into the comp picks, I think it would be pretty telling that they don't think Jalen Ramsey will be part of the plans next year.
Yeah. At which point, the first guy you call is Asante Samuel, but
with his shoulder injury, I don't know if that's a good call.
True. One of the biggest and best trolls on Dolphins Twitter, Mr. Carpet Dinosaur, asks you basically what you think of Will Johnson refusing to run. He knows my opinion. I'm not going to give it. Everybody knows my opinion on Will Johnson. Too long. Not going to give the full speech. I think he's one of the top 7 players in the draft. I think he fits our system very well. So
I don't think the concern for me is him running. To me, it's like, okay, whatever. The bigger concern is how does the injury look? I know he had the hamstring injury last year, and
he had to have surgery.
Sort of derailed the entire season, and to some degree looked like it derailed some of his pre-draft work. That's the bigger question mark for me. I don't really care that he didn't run. The tape shows enough for me in terms of his ability to run that, like, if he's not fully healthy, I don't want him running. Because if he hurts that hamstring again, then we're in a completely different scenario, right? So, like, don't run, figure it out. He's cornerback 1. Yeah. If he's there at 13, you run the pickup and you figure out the rest of the draft from there.
And just to give everybody what happened to, because, he had a couple other minor injuries too, but USC, he gets to pick 6. He immediately comes out because he tweaked his hamstring. Believe he tried to play next game, which I believe was Washington, and he completely destroyed his hamstring, is what the Michigan people are saying. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But it was more serious than I thought. But I think some of the intrigue has gone away where now everybody's assuming it is going to be either Will Johnson if he's there or Jahdae Barron. In fact, if you're a Dolphin fan, like we keep talking about people ask about the concerns about Will Johnson not running. If you're a Dolphins fan, you got to be excited because it means you have a chance to get one of the truly elite players in the draft at 13.
Yeah, I actually don't think Jahdae Barron is my second corner. I have been pretty vocal in that Siobhan Ravel is the second best corner in this class. And
I do like him.
I think we're getting some prospect fatigue. I think we're getting some injury concerns. For the most part, it doesn't appear like the injury is a major concern for NFL teams. I think his doctor came out and pretty publicly said he'll be ready.
I think if Ravel was healthy, he is a top 10 pick.
Yeah, for sure. And if you get him in the second round, I don't know what his draft stock. I know the Beast, Dade Brugler's sort of draft guide had him a little bit lower. If he's there in round 2, I'd run that bit. I don't care if you double up in corner in this class if you get Will Johnson and Revel. Yeah. Those would be no-brainer picks.
Real quick, I'm fine with Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon's not my first choice at 13, but I do like him.
Derek Harmon's not the defensive tackle I'd take at 13.
Is it another Michigan player or is it an Ole Miss player?
It's a Michigan player.
So you're taking Kenneth Grant.
Kenneth Grant is, I think, the best defensive tackle in this class, and he is a day 1 starter at the position and day 1 set and forget starter. I like Harmon. I don't love Harmon. I'm a little lower on him than I think some people. I think he's a good player, and I think he'll be impactful. But watching some of the guys a little bit lower on the board, I think you can get an impactful defensive tackle later. So maybe this is not the year where I'm taking a defensive tackle early. Unless you think that Kenneth Grant is a game changer, which I think he has the potential to be a game changer. But a guy like Derek Harmon, I think you take one in the second or third round.
Yeah, it's one of those things where and you were talking about doubling up on corner because looking at how drafts go, love Will Johnson, and love Jahdae Barron, love Ravel, like you said, but some other guys who are popping up who I think could be starters really early. Za Frazier, Noel Williams, Dorian Strong. You get some of those guys late day 2, we'll say, maybe early day 3. I think you come away happy with this.
The proponent that I've been a fan of, and I know other people will not like this because they have a different belief on Kader Kohu. I'd use the first pick to get a boundary corner, take a guy like Will Johnson, or in the second round, take a guy like Revel or whatever is available. And then on day 2 or day 3, take a slot corner.
Yep.
I look at a guy like Upton Stout from Western Kentucky. I think that guy's going to be a monster in the NFL.
Who is coming in for a visit. They just announced before we came on.
Yes, I think that he is a guy who is like going to be an NFL guy. And the only reason why teams or why like media is not as high on him is because he's a little bit smaller. He's a little bit weaker. And he's really limited to only playing in the slot. He's not going to have the versatility that some other guys have, but that's a guy to me that, like, if you're looking to move Kader Kohu to the outside a little bit more full-time, which is a position where I think he can play, and he looked good playing it at times this past season, then the move is to get one of the slot corners later on. Everyone's going to say Jacob Parrish, and like if you can get Jacob Parrish in round 3, go get Jacob Parrish. I think that guy's going to be gone before your second round pick.
The other one everybody loves is Kobe Bryant in like round 4.
Kobe Bryant, I think, is probably more of an outside corner, but I love him. I think that he's a very dynamic, like, I love my favorite thing about Kobe Bryant is that he's not afraid to talk shit. Like, he's not a fan of your shit. He's going to talk shit to you. Like, that to me, the mentality thing is not something you can measure, but also if you've got that kind of mentality, that's something that's going to give you a leg up on other guys. But I do agree that like there are some day 3 corners that I really like, and I would at least kick the tires on. I love Za Frazier. I love the Western Michigan corner, Bilal Coney, another guy who was really.
I think we talked to him too, or are going to bring him in too as well. Mr. S, I know you're here. Check and see if Coney's coming in because I think he has been linked with the Dolphins.
I mean, but that's a guy who just really knows how to play in the run. He's a guy who is athletic as heck. He's got good size, speed. Like those are things that I think translate. And it may not be a day 1 starter at the position, but that's a guy who I'd be willing to develop if you can get him around 4 or 5.
Yep. Bilal Coney from Western Michigan. You just saw him ask me who, so that's what I said. But yeah, there's some good ones. And just to go back to the talking trades, I see everybody because I'm of the opinion now, no matter what the Dolphins do, the fan base is just going to freak out right now because they are done with Chris Greer, which I'm not going to say is wrong, but it's like I see people saying, well, why are you trading Ramsey but not Tyreek Hill? I would love to be able to trade Tyreek Hill right now, but not many people are going to be trading for a wide receiver who quit on his team in the last game of the year, got hurt, is becoming a distraction on social media, and just had a domestic situation last week. So
there comes a point
where
you
want to trade him, you're getting pennies on the dollar. And I honestly think if the Dolphins got a 4th rounder, they'd be willing to take it for Tyreek Hill at this point. Just it's a feel better trade. But I don't think they have that market. And I think they're like, you know what? He's gone after this year. I don't think there's any scenario that he's back unless he like shatters records and we win the Super Bowl. I don't think he's back. I think this is the last year. I think it's designed for his contract. But I also think at this point, the Dolphins are like, look, we're not getting any offers. Let's just try and run it back with him this year because he was so good the first 2 years and he can deal with it.
Yeah, I think Tyreek Hill is going to be a part of this team next year. I don't see a situation where he's not. Unless a team gets desperate for a wide receiver and is willing to sort of look past the problems. But I think to some point, those problems become too much to handle. Yeah.
So I think if things go belly up, like some people seem to think it is, or that it will, you try and get something for him in the season. I also don't agree with the narrative some people are having that we're rebuilding. I'm not going to say we're retooling either. I think we're kind of somewhere in between where it's like, let's be honest, the players we have on this team at their best are difference makers, are very good to elite players at their position. We don't have any depth. We gambled because we had 2 on a rookie deal. The gambles didn't work out. We're trying to reset the roster. But You get Tua, you get Waddle, you get Achane, you get Jonnu, you get Sealer, you get Jordan Brooks, Willie Gazeman at this level. You get them playing, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb. You get them playing at the level that they can. Anything can happen. So it's one of those things where it's just like, look, we're rotating out some of the depth. So could it be a down year? Sure, but could we be back where we were 2 years ago? I don't think it's as unlikely as some people think.
Yeah, I think I've sort of labeled it as more of a reloading situation, because I think that this is a situation where you look at the team. When you lose a guy like Teron Armstead, you lose a guy like Calais Campbell, you're not going to be able to keep doing the same thing. And a lot of their free agent signings are more younger, maybe prove it guys to some degree. A guy like Ifatu Melifonwu or a guy like Ashton Davis, right? Like they're more prove it deals than proven players.
Yeah.
But I think that you're getting into a situation where, like, truthfully, next season's going to ride on Tua. And like, that's where it should be. Enough is enough of, like, for me at least, like enough is enough of like trying to deny what this thing is, right? Like this team's going to win or lose based on what Tua looks like next year and if he's on the field. And to some degree, right? Like, yes, he's going to need pieces around him. He's going to need an offensive line. He's got, like, all those things are going to matter. Yes. But also time's running out for him to, like, I know he's a very talented quarterback. And I understand that, like, there are going to likely be people who don't agree with this take, and that's fine. Next year, if he's not healthy, it's time to move on. Like, you can't just keep delaying the problem until it becomes no longer a problem. Like, this is now the time where it's like for the Dolphins, for Tua, like, you need to see if he's going to be able to stay healthy and be able to sustain play over 17 games. Like, there's no other way around this. I know that there's like an out in his contract either next year or the year after, like where you can get out of the contract and you can reset. This is the year of evaluation for him. And you can't just keep like hoping he stays healthy. He needs to prove he can stay healthy at some point.
Yeah, but at the same point, we can't be saying Tua's this awful quarterback like some people do.
No, because he's not. Yeah, like
he's not. He is great when he's healthy. But like I think even Jeff Darlington, like the dive bar had Jeff Darlington on, and he flat out even said, like, I was actually shocked how harsh he was. Where he basically said, Tua, what are you doing? You cannot be. You're down by 3 touchdowns. You cannot be diving head first.
Yeah, like, and that's something that Chris Greer said, right? Like, I think it was telling when Greer and McDaniel before the offseason started were like, yeah, he can't be doing that. Like, I know he wants to fight for the yards, but he also has to understand what he is and who he is to the Dolphins. Like, he is the quarterback of the future for this team. Like, there's no other way around it, and he has to prove that he can do that. And so, like, it's not a talent thing for me, because it should not be a talented thing for, like, anyone. He's proven he can be a high-level quarterback in the NFL. He's proven it across 3 years, but, like, the biggest question mark is, can he do it for more than 6-7 games a year? And that's what I think this offseason is what it's setting up to be, right? Because, like, I don't want to talk about firings. I don't want to talk about what the front office looks like next year, but there is a situation where you can go into next offseason with a new regime and a new quarterback. And, like, hypothetically, whether that's the case or not, I don't know if that's the case or not. But, like, you're entering a situation where you need to see what Tua looks like for you. And there's no other time to do that than right now, because you need to be able to see what the quarterback of the future is for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we are making a change in the regime, I think we already hired our future GM in Champ Kelly, who seems to be very highly thought of, but that's all speculation.
I don't buy the whole I don't buy the whole Chris Greer is going to get that promotion after the draft. I don't buy that.
But no, to talk about, like, to go back, the 1 year we had Tua was healthy. What did we have? We had one of the best rushing games in the NFL. And what did we have last year? We had some explosive plays, but we also had the most rushing plays stopped at or behind the line of scrimmage. So the running game cratered. Now, I will say, I think more of it than should have been just comes down to Austin Jackson getting hurt. I don't think people want to hear that, but I also think we saw, like, you, me, and Jordan talk about it all the time. The tight end production fell off a cliff. Like, we did not have good blocking tight ends last year. Alec Ingold, I know people don't want to hear this, but his blocking was bad last year for all but like 3 games. And then Achane he's an explosive runner. He's a big play guy. I'm not saying don't disregard him, but he is not the guy who starts the or sets the tempo of a game as the number one runner. So not having Mostert falling off a cliff also hurt us too. So I actually think early day three, I might be looking at a power runner to kind of get to pair with him.
I think that's why they brought in Alexander Madison. I think to some degree that's planning to like give yourself an option to go draft one as well. But like, yeah, the thing about their running game last year was that Mostert struggled, Jalen Wright was inconsistent, and Devon Achane, while I think he's very good, don't get me wrong, does not take the easy yards. There are not very many plays where he takes 3 yards and keeps the drive moving.
I think they showed he's one of the most inefficient runners in the NFL.
Yeah, there was that stat about like yards left on the table. I don't know how they calculate this stuff. I'm not a math guy, so I'll let other people figure that out. And I just look at the pretty numbers on a graph. But like, the film shows enough for me that like he's super talented. He can do a lot of stuff well, but he's not taking easy yards, and I think that's a concern. It's not a concern that like don't play him, but like you have to get a complimentary running back that can do that. And good news is this is the draft where if you want to get a running back, again, much like defensive tackle, I think there's plenty of guys on day 3 that can do that.
Yeah. It's one of those things, and this is no disrespect to Jalen Wright, but I don't like trading up for running backs, even if it's day 3. I would have let it come to us, especially because now in day 3, you're looking at Damian Martinez, Cam Scatabo. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but Cam Scatabo, what's his name? Devin Neal from Kansas. Like, you have some good day 3 backs that it's just like.
My whole thing on this is that to some degree you have to evaluate based on the board that season. I know everyone does that. I don't disagree with the idea, Brett, of like, you know what, you could have gotten Jalen Wright this year, but like, I think it's more important to judge it based off of last year. And like, I think the plan was for Jalen Wright to play more. Like, I don't think that was not a part of the plan at all, but like, I don't think he got his watched.
I think he couldn't do
I don't think the situation was good enough for him. And I think to some degree they realized that their best chance of winning last year was going to be Achane and Mostert, even with his injuries and his fumbling issues.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, like, you just got to ride with those guys and you got to figure out where the rest of it falls. We'll see what this year looks like for him. But I mean, I don't think you can go into next year just with him as your clear-cut RB2 and not having another contingency plan or another back in place. I think you should have 3 backs next year that you trust, just with some of Achane's durability concerns, some of Wright's question marks. I would have 3 backs on the roster next year that you trust to be guys for you.
Yep. There's one for you.
DJ Giddens, super good. I think you'd have to take him on in the second round to have him. Between that fall from like the 40s to the 90s, the late 90s, he'd be gone by then. So if you want to take him round 2, sure. I just don't think that's the right move of the Dolphins' resources this year.
And that's Parrish you're talking about, right?
Parrish is the corner who, again, I think you'd have to take either trade up for, because I don't know if he's going to be there in the mid 40s where the Dolphins pick in the second round, but a guy with a little bit of versatility. I think he's more of a slot corner in the NFL, but super good, super fluid. Played really well against Tet McMillan last year in their game against Arizona. So like, from all accounts and purposes, like that's a guy again who, if you can find a way to get him, maybe that allows you to not have to take a corner at 13.
Okay. Now, do this for everybody who comes on that's helping, or we did with Mason last week when he was here. Your top 5 picks at 13.
At 13, okay. Number 1 is Will Johnson. I think we've talked about this enough. Like, that is the guy for me. That is the crown jewel of like, if he's there, which I think he will be there, but you never know for sure, he should be the pick. And you should not think twice about that pick being the pick. Second for me is, and I know that it's sort of fallen a little bit more on him just for some of the sakes and some of the way the draft board falls. I still like Malachi Starks. And I still think Malachi Starks is a really good fit in this defense. And I know that they've signed a few safeties in Ashton Davis and Melifonwu who could be guys next year, could be impactful players. But I don't think that Malachi Starks is a guy who only has to play safety for you. I was watching him probably about 5 minutes before this podcast started, and we were on one of the games, and I was like, I sat there and I went, I think this guy can play corner at the next level. Like, I think this guy could be an impactful cornerback at the next level. The versatility is real with him. I think if you want to really shore up the safety room and replace Javon Holland, that's the guy who replaces Javon Holland for you. I know the other guy that's really popular is Nick Emanwari. I don't love Emanwari at 13. I think he's more of a day 2 guy for me.
Yeah.
Third is Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle. I know that they like Patrick Paul, and I think Patrick Paul can be a quality player. I think Kelvin Banks is a different level. I've watched his film. I think that guy's a left tackle for 10 years in the NFL. And so maybe that is not the pick because they have other needs or they have other players that they like, but that's a guy I would take at 13, depending on how the board fell. Also, Will Campbell, like throw him in that same tier, right? Of like Campbell, Banks, like one of those guys, if they're there at 13, I think you have a conversation about it. Fourth, again, it's not going to be popular because I know other people have him a lot lower on their board. Siobhan Revel Jr. of East Carolina. That's a starting cornerback in the NFL. And I think that if you mentioned it, right, if he was not hurt, that guy is a top 15 pick. And so maybe the medicals is the biggest holdup there. But if those medicals come back clean, and they've certainly done tests during the combine. I think he was there at the combine, just didn't run. But if those medical tests come back clean and you feel confident with it, I'd take him at 13. And finally, Kenneth Grant. The only reason why Kenneth Grant is not higher on this list is because I think you have bigger needs. And the biggest need for me is corner. So that's why I have 2 corners above him. But I think Kenneth Grant's an impactful player in the NFL. And if he's there at 13, which could happen, I think that like the 49ers could have some conversations about taking him when you look at their depth chart. But if he's there at 13, you at least got to have the conversation about it. You at least got to sit there for a few seconds and go, maybe. But I think that is probably where I am in terms of like the 5 guys who, if they take those guys at 13, I'm excited. And I think that you've drafted a guy who's a starter at the next level.
Yeah. You mentioned Kelvin Banks. It's a guy I've kind of fallen away from just because just how the draft season's kind of gone. But I think he's one of the, I think if you look, he's one of the elite players in this class. I think he ultimately becomes a left guard, especially for us. But yeah, no, he's a great player.
I watched him. I think he's a tackle. I know that everyone else thinks he's a guard. And this brings up another conversation that I like to have with people is why do we think he's a guard? Do we think he's a guard because he's not fast enough to play tackle? Do we think he's a guard because he's not big enough? He doesn't have the arms, right? Like, what is the reason why we're moving him to guard? Because I think that like a lot of people, and not you specifically or anyone in specific, but a lot of people, when they talk about guys like Banks and Will Campbell, they just go, well, he's a guard. I don't know. It's like, I watched Kelvin Banks' film. I think that guy's a tackle.
Yeah.
I think that guy, you could develop him to be a good, solid ass tackle. But I think that maybe some of it is probably for him. I think it's probably more balance and size, which is fine. But I think that guy's a tackle. I would just like, for people who say they think he's a guard, I just want to know why they think he's a guard.
I just think for me personally, I just think he translates. I just look at him. I'm like, boom, immediate all pro guard, left guard.
That's fine.
Campbell is one. The arm length is a big thing. But the thing I go back to is shout out to one of our friends over in the UK, Rob Staten. He does work for the Seahawks, like covers the Seahawks, is a fan of the Seahawks. And he and I talked about it last year. And he was one of the first people who told me that he's like, if you watch Will Campbell's film, he's like, I just don't see it at tackle. And I watched, and against some of the better edge rushers Will Campbell went against, I think he lost a little more than he should have, at least when you're talking as an elite player. Plus, and I've said this before, the arm length is a concern for me just because if you look at Will Campbell's arm length, there was only, at the end of the season, 7 starting tackles in the NFL. that had arms as short as Will Campbell's, and one of them was Kendall Lamb, who was a backup. So it's kind of being a little nitpicky there, but that's why like you see it, and it's just like you've got to sell me with Will Campbell that he is a true unicorn, because that's what he would be if you look at that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Campbell, I'm a little bit more in on him being guard just because that arm length is real, right? That arm length concern is real. Like that's a thing that historically has not done well for tackles.
Yeah.
To some degree, excuse me. I think you could still let him fail at guard or tackle, right? Like that's my big term is like let him fail at tackle. You could switch him to guard later. I think it's for a guy like Campbell, like you'll know pretty quickly if that arm length is a concern in the NFL. And when you know if you know that arm length is a real concern, then you shift him over to guard. But like I would like to see him at tackle against NFL edge rushers first. But I do agree that arm length is probably what is going to make him a guard at the next level. I think he's an all-pro guard, though. I think Will Campbell is a day one high-level guard. Like that is a guy who like is just a completely different level player.
Yeah, I just don't know. Like the thing I've told people, the argument I get into, and if he fell to us at 13, I'm not saying I wouldn't take him, but the thing I tell people is I was like, look, the NFL is willing to pay $100 million for a guard once they've proven they can play in the NFL. They are not willing to spend a first-round pick on a guard and develop them.
Yeah, absolutely fine to be like a guard. Like I don't know if a guard anymore is like an insult. I think we saw last year. The guard should not be an insult. The Dolphins needed about 4 of them last year. Frankly, right, like if he's a guard at the NFL bid, fuck yeah, dude. Like if I don't have to worry about a guard at left, like if I don't have to worry about left guard for 5 years, that's good. I'm content with that.
Yep. Real quick before we get to the mock, do you agree with this that Membu has overtaken Campbell as OL1?
Truthfully, not watched much of Membu, but from what I've watched, yeah. I think that like he is probably just because I think he's also a tackle. And when you look at value, right, like that's tackle is more valuable than guard still. But like, I think Campbell's still really good. But from what I've watched of Bembo, which again is not a lot of exposure, I would be pretty comfortable with either of them. Like, I think they may be 1A, 1B at offensive line.
Okay. So what we'll do is, we're doing stick to the model draft. Very good, very new model. Kev, what Jordan and I have been doing is we've been alternating picks. When we get to the Dolphins, we just do a kind of group think that and do the picks. We'll come up with that pick together. But since you're the guest, I will let you get the odds. So you start out with number 1.
This one is fairly obvious, I think. I don't think there's any more conversation. It's Cam Ward. He was on a fucking Twitch stream talking about how AJ Brown is worse than Calvin Ridley. I don't think we need to have this conversation anymore.
Yeah. Yep. I honestly think we all know who the top 3 are going to be probably. It sounds like Travis Hunter is also locked into the Browns. So
3rd, it's the Giants, right?
Yep.
Could see him going Shador Sanders. I don't think they'll go Shador Sanders. I think the pick here is Abdul Carter.
Yeah.
I think that they need more edge rush, and like I think Abdul Carter is a dynamic day one player. So,
yeah, best player in the draft in my opinion. Abdul Carter has also had some social media stuff come out saying that he's going to be a Giant. So I think the top 3. I think the only question with the top 3, who's going 2 and 3, but I think we can safely say those. Our Twitter admin convinced me on this. With the Patriots, we want to change it up and say Armand Membu. I think he is probably the best pure tackle in the draft. So
yeah, I think he's the best pure tackle.
Yeah.
And I think I could see them doing that just because they desperately need a tackle.
Yeah.
Who's next? 5 is, if I remember correctly, the Jags.
Yep, it's the Jags.
Shockingly, could see them going like Ashton Genty, but I don't think they're going to go Ashton Genty. I think the pick here is Mason Graham. It feels like they're going to need a disruptive defensive player, and that's who that is in this year's class.
Yep. And again, Mason Graham to me is, again, if you talk about elite, he is elite. People are definitely overthinking that he came into the combine at, 290 or 295. He has great technique, former wrestler. if you look, there are some great X accounts that just keep posting the advanced stats, and he's like I saw, he's one of, I think they said 10 defensive tackles in the last 20 years to have like over 10% win rates in both run snaps and pass snaps in college. So he's truly an elite player. And I think he's just like you mentioned prospect fatigue earlier. I think he's definitely someone who coming in a little smaller than people expect it, but just prospect fatigue as well. Oakland, Vegas Raiders. I think they're going to go Genty. I do like what Genty came out and said yesterday about it's a tackle sport. So who are you going to take? The person who they can't tackle. I do have questions about Genty as an elite player in the draft just because he has some mileage, and I do think he showed against some of the tougher competition that he can have fumble issues and also not have the elite physical skills you look for. But I do think in a Pete Carroll offense, he would do really well.
I think he's the Marshawn Lynch in that offense. Like, I love Ashton Genty. I don't think that this is a shock there.
So you're the lucky one who gets the Jets. So we're going punter here, right?
Yeah. Can I take him and take a long snapper?
Yeah.
I will do them well, and I will not, unfortunately, do that as much as I would love to do it. I would have gone Membo if he was on the board because they do still need tackles. But with him off the board, I think they're going to go playmaker. And for me, that's Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren's the best pure playmaker in this class. I think there's a lot of things that he could do in that offense. And that feels like the pick to me that makes a lot of sense for what they want to do. But again, like, I'm not going to count out a potential Will Campbell pick or even like defense. They do still need some defensive players. I think, though, the pick is going to be.
Yeah. I will say this. I do like I've said this too. I think some people, not that I don't think Ty Warren's bad, because I think if he was there at 13, the Dolphins do have to seriously consider him. But I do think people do not give Andy Koltnecki the credit he deserves for scheming Tyler Warren open as much as he did. That's not really an insult to Warren, who does have some of the best hands in the class. But, people talking like he's Brock Bowers, I think that's a little overboard. That being said, I would and I did this last week, if he was there for Carolina, I would seriously have considered him. Carolina could go a bunch of interesting ways here. I will. I will give them Jalen Walker. I saw Brett Coleman make a tweet that said you either think Jalen Walker's going top 10 or he's not going in the first round, but there's no in between. I am not a huge Jalen Walker fan, but Carolina really just needs that talent. Yeah. They had their old GM, what was his name? Terry Fedorov, was awful. Did not give them the talent. And just something about me thinks that they're going to pass on Ted McMillan. I'm not a big Xavier Legette fan. I just don't know, unless they can get a trade down partner. I just can't see him go wide receiver there.
Yeah, I think that Walker's a really good fit in what they want to do with some of his versatility, because he could play a little bit of like off-ball linebacker. He can be an edge at the NFL level. Like, those kind of guys, I think, really fit in what their defensive coordinator is Jero Evero, and I probably butchered that name entirely, likes to do with some of his edge rushers. That feels like a fit to me. That's just like a no-brainer fit. But I could see them going offensive playmaker, because you still do need to give Bryce Young weapons and to further actually evaluate him. So I could see that. I think that the playmakers are going to come on day 2, though. Yeah. The Saints is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Largely because I am not discounting the possibility of them taking Shedeur Sanders. With their need for a quarterback, with Derek Carr potentially, I think he's out for the year. But
he is not related to Jay. No,
not related to Prince either, by the way, for any baseball fans out there. I'm so torn on this pick, because I think that they could go 2 real distinct ways, and both would be good picks there. I'm going to go Ted McMillan. I think the pick here is Ted McMillan. Would not shock me if the pick, though, is Shador Sanders, just because I think that they've set themselves up to be able to take Sanders if they like what he brings. And I like Shador Sanders. I think Ted McMillan is a wide receiver one for years, and I think he's a future 1,000-yard receiver. So if you can get a guy like that and pair him with like Olave, that's a dangerous wide receiver room for the future.
Yeah. And McMillan is one, like the Saints are one of the teams that have traditionally had success with receivers that are a lot like Ted McMillan, whether it was Michael Thomas or going a little further back, Marquise Colston. They know how to use those bigger wide receivers. So I don't think it's the issue there. Bears, I think if it falls like this, I think they go Will Campbell.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah, just add talent.
Maybe edge rusher. I think they could still take a pass rusher. There's a few there that I really like. Shamar Stewart, I think, is the best of the rest outside of Abdul Carter. But if you can get a guy like Will Campbell, I think you take Will Campbell and further give yourself possibilities for keeping Caleb Williams alive.
Yeah.
Because that is the goal of it.
Yeah. And the thing is, as good as Ben Johnson is with his schemes, you need a really good offensive line for those schemes because you need a lot of time in there. So they got to keep building it. San Francisco's up, and I think that's you. I've
said it before. I think this is the Kenneth Grant pick. I think this is where Kenneth Grant goes. I think that it would make a lot of sense. Would also, don't count out Shamar Stewart here. I think it's going to be a defensive line trench player. I think it's going to be Kenneth Grant because they desperately need impactful interior guys. And he's the most impactful interior guy in this class. And I mean, I've said it before. I think that guy's his pass rush skills is incredible. I think he's really good against the run. I don't see a lot of issues with him as a football player. If you can get him at 11, that's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. Yep. And again, I'll say what I said the other week. Take a shot every time you see that clip of him tracing down Singleton versus Penn State from 2 years ago.
I think I've seen that clip probably 1,000 times since the draft cycle started. And we're going to probably see it another 5 times on draft night.
Yep. So Dallas, I would not be shocked if they took Amarian Hampton. But if the draft falls like this with how the offensive line has kind of crumbled, I think they'll take Kelvin Banks. They need to build it. Dallas has proven they will. They're one of the teams that will, whether it's a tackle or guard, they will play you there. They need to get back to their bread and butter. They got away from it. I don't really know what they're doing coach-wise because Brian Schottenheimer is your head coach. Just seems very unambitious. I know there's some people saying Shador Sanders. I can't see that.
I can't see them taking a quarterback.
And
But
they've also proven they'll take the local kids. If a local kid's good, they'll take the local kid.
Yeah. I actually think that the pick is going to be corner or receiver for them. And it would not shock me if Will Johnson is the pick there. I think that they're going to end up going receiver because they need another weapon next to CeeDee Lamb. If McMillan's there, I think they run that pick up the podium. But you mentioned the local kid. I would not shock me if Matthew Golden was the pick there. With him being able to be that dynamic playmaker next to CeeDee Lamb. Dolphins are up.
Yep.
I think it's Will Johnson. If he's still there, I think it's Will Johnson. I don't know if you disagree, but
oh no, like I said, Will Johnson. And again, I'll say this, and I know everybody. Yes, ha ha ha. Brett's a Michigan fan. All that, blah blah blah. Michigan plays the defense we run. He legitimately the exact same defense. Wink Martindale was the defensive coordinator. Before that, it was Jesse Minter. Before that, it was Mike McDonald. They were all on the same staff as Anthony Weaver. Will Johnson already knows all the cues, all the plays for this defense. And he comes in, and even I'm not saying this to get away from anything against Jalen Ramsey, but whether he's here or not, we need more people who can get the ball in the second.
Even if Jalen Ramsey's here, you still need another guy next to him, man.
Yeah, you need someone who can get it. And Will Johnson is probably the best ball hawk in this class. He's got like 3 or 4 pick sixes in his career. Texas doesn't like most teams don't throw at him. Like very few teams look at him. People say, oh, he lost some to Marvin Harrison Jr., who didn't. He also won a few. He went up against Rome Odunze. Like he has gone up against top receivers. He knows it just makes too much sense. Part of me thinks he will be gone a lot earlier, but if he falls to us at 13, I do not see any, unless Mason Graham somehow falls to us or Will Campbell. I do not see how you can pass him on Will Johnson.
I can't either. Yeah. I think that is a day one starter and a guy who is going to play 10 years in the NFL at a really high level. And if the Dolphins can get that at corner, hell yeah, dude, sign me up.
Yeah. Colts, if it felt like this, I think they're going one of two ways. They're either going Jahdae Barron or Colston Loveland. I think you still are trying to make Richardson work. So I think if the draft falls this way, the Colts would take Loveland. I think he's a lot closer to Tyler Warren than people want to admit. I'm not saying he is better than Tyler Warren, but he is an elite receiver at the tight end position. And when you are trying to make things work for a young quarterback or even a backup quarterback, which I think is going to be the case with the Colts, you need a good tight end. So I think if the draft falls like this, it's hard to go against Colston Loveland.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if that was not the pick. If he's still there, could see them going like receiver or defense, as you mentioned, but I think they'll take Loveland.
Yep.
Atlanta, there's two guys here who I think are like no-brainer possibilities here. They desperately need a pass rusher. There's no other way around that. They need a guy who can get to the quarterback.
Yes.
And there are a few guys there who I think can do that, right? Shamar Stewart, Michael Williams. I think they're going to go Mike Green, though. I know there are some of the off-the-field concerns with Mike Green that I can't answer towards, and I'm not even going to start to try and speculate that I can. But from a pure play perspective, this is a guy who is a athletic freak. He's a little bit smaller. He's a little bit weaker, but athletic freak who's going to get sacks in the NFL. Like I think that guy is a really high level pass rusher, and he may not be able to play against the run consistently, but you're paying pass rushers to get to the quarterback, not to defend the run. And I think that's what Mike Green is.
Yeah. Real quick to go back to Will Johnson. Todd McShay said he might be running into 4.6. All due respect to Todd McShay, but for years he has proven that he does not really know much about certain players. So
I feel like a lot of that's projection because he hasn't run, right? Like I don't really buy that projection stuff that much.
Any teams might trade up soon for Sanders? Maybe. That's kind of tough. I think the Saints could change it. If the Saints do not go Sanders, I think the Steelers just stand pat because I think the Steelers know that no one's going up for him at that point. What do you think?
I don't know. I think the Steelers would consider trading up just to guarantee themselves him because I think to some degree, like we don't know for sure, but there are certainly teams that if he starts to fall could be like, ooh, maybe this is the time where we start to at least consider moving up for him. Right. And like, I don't know who those teams are. Like I would have said the Seahawks, but they signed Darnold to that big deal. So I don't think that's the move this year. Vegas, maybe, right? Like if he keeps falling, maybe Vegas tries to trade back up and get a quarterback. Like, I don't know for sure. Maybe the Giants try and trade up, right? Like if they still have some draft capital, if they really want a long-term starter there, maybe they can get both, right? Like I don't know for sure, but I think if you're the Steelers, you can try and guarantee yourself him if you trade up a little bit.
Yeah. The Cardinals, I feel like they've traditionally been a team that will gamble on the athlete. So I think Shamar Stewart's someone they'll go for. It's kind of projecting. I think he can potentially develop into the big D end in a 3-4, maybe an inside pass rusher, but he had the RAS score of 10. And like I said, I just think they have a history of just gambling on the athlete, and this is why you see so many boomer bust picks for them. Plus, one of their top scouts now is Chris Greer's son, and you know how much he likes the RAS.
Is that actually the thing?
His son is. The guy who was Cam Smith's roommate is now a scout for Arizona.
That's hilarious. I did
Yep.
not know that. That is so funny. And I'm shocked
Yep.
he's not a scout for the Dolphins, frankly. I'm shocked he's not a Nepo baby scout.
So you got Cincinnati.
Wow, what a tough.
Speaking of teams that go after Rass.
God, I don't know. Like, I think that they could go edge. They could absolutely go offensive line to try and keep Joe Burrow alive. And I think that's where I'm going to lean. Just largely because, man, we can't be having another year where he's not healthy or where he can't like play and has to like try and run around and make plays to Jamar Chase all day. Could also see receiver because we don't think that I don't think that the long-term answer for T. Higgins is on that team. But I'm going to lean offensive line. I think Josh Simmons makes a lot of sense because he's got some of that flexibility. He can play tackle, he can play guard. Another guy who I think would make sense is Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State offensive lineman, but I think they'll go Josh Simmons.
Yep. Josh Simmons is a guy I would say if it wasn't for the patella injury, you're talking about him like you're talking about Membo and Campbell as OT1. I actually don't even know if it's even close if he's healthy.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so it's a steal. Seattle, you just got rid of everybody. They are another team that is perpetually on the look for offensive line, but I think they'll go Emeka Egbuka. I think it just makes too much sense from a scheme fit. And, you get him back with his old teammate. And I actually think Egbuka is probably the best wide receiver in the class. Kind of shocked you haven't heard his name as much as past Ohio State receivers, but he great route runner, good size. He can play outside, play inside. So this to me just makes too much sense for Seattle.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer to me. I think for them to go receiver or offensive line, but I don't think they've historically drafted offensive linemen early. So I don't know if this is a year.
The ones they haven't really been good either.
This pick for me, Tampa Bay feels like a no-brainer. If Jahad Campbell's on the board, Jahad Campbell's going to be a Buccaneer. He fits that defense like a glove. They need an answer when Levante David eventually calls it quits because he can't play till he's 55 years old, as much as maybe they'd like to. Some of the injury concerns are certainly real, but that's an elite athlete with good coverage ability. And I think that fits exactly what Tampa Bay wants from a linebacker.
Yeah, nope, I agree with that. Denver, if you believe the rumors that are out there, it's Amari and Hampton. They will not go. Like, if Hampton's there, they're going to take him. That's what the rumor is right now. I'm just going to stick with it. It's funny, a year ago we're talking about the Denver Broncos is one of the least talented teams, if not the least talented team in the NFL, but they're now one of the up-and-coming teams. So, yeah, probably I don't really think I'd go running back early, but it just seems like that's the case. And you get to pick the Steelers.
Again, one that doesn't feel that challenging for me. I think it's Shedeur Sanders if he's on the board. Could see them trading up for him, but I think that if he's there at 21, they'll take Shedeur Sanders at 21. And I think it'd be a great pick because I think Shedeur Sanders, the only reason why he's falling is because there aren't a lot of quarterback desperate teams like there used to be.
Yeah. The Chargers. I think if the draft falls this way, it's either I was going to say Mikael Williams or James Pierce, but knowing Harbaugh and Minter and how much you need that physical nickel corner, I think Jahdae Barron really translates well inside. They run the same defense we do. Barron does fit it well. So I think if he's there, I'm actually shocked we have Barron there because a lot of people may even prefer him to Will Johnson. But yeah, I think we're talking about guys who we were talking about out boundaries or slots. I think he goes right into the slot in their system and becomes very good right away. But yeah, that's just the take best player available to me.
Yeah, that feels like a no-brainer. I think they desperately need corners, and Jahdae Barron fits that a lot. Green Bay here. I'm torn.
This is a team I do think could, if Tet McMillan gets to like 8, I think Green Bay, or past to 10, I think Green Bay would trade up for them because
I think they start talking about it. They desperately need a receiver. I think they're going to go defensive line here, and if Derek Hardman's there, I think that's a good pick for them. Again, very impactful, maybe not perfect, and has some issues about finishing, but I think that's a high-level player. And I think his size, his power, some of his athletic stuff, like that stuff translates. And so you just have to teach him how to do the rest of it. And I don't think that's a big concern.
Yeah. And like we've talked about, a lot of people like the Chris Jones comparison for Derek Harmon. Maybe a little ambitious there, but a lot of people seem to be on that kick. Minnesota, if you look at their system, you look at what Flo likes to do, Malachi Starks, if he's there. It just makes too much sense. You talked about him. I know a couple people still like him for us. Very smart player. I think his stock has fallen a bit because of the RAS. And yes, unfortunately, we're all, a lot of people are, or sometimes, unfortunately, people are going to put a lot of emphasis on the RAS. But safety also isn't really a position that's considered high value early in the draft. But if he gets to Vikings, that's just another one, just perfect fit for what Brian Flores wants to do.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. Houston is such an interesting team because they effectively tore down their entire offensive line in an offseason and said, fuck it, we'll find someone else. And like, oh, buddy, I don't know what that else is. I don't think they're going to take offensive line in the first round. I look at a guy like Walter Nolan. I don't know where Walter Nolan goes in this draft because he could go early, but he also could stay on the board for a while. I think Houston would take him here. They do need interior defensive line help, and Walter Nolan's the best available there. So I think I'll go Walter Nolan, but like I would also look at a guy like Tyler Booker. Maybe they take a receiver, but like I think that they need defensive help as well, and that's what Walter Nolan is. A super disruptive, super good athlete. Like those guys, there are concerns with him. He's certainly not perfect, but he certainly has NFL skills that just need to be honed.
Yep. Another guy who I could easily see us taking at 13. He's not in my top 5, but I definitely would not. I would understand if we took him there. The Rams. Part of me wants to do what Mason did last week and take Jackson Dart. But the draft falls this way. They are one of the teams I do think could go Siobhan Revel and just say, we'll wait on talent. But they're another team that desperately has needed offensive tackles ever since Whitworth has retired. So I will say Josh Cornerly, who I kind of think is living off of his film against Abdul Carter, which was really good. But they need offensive line help. Cornerly goes into that scheme really well. So I think they'll take the best available tackle there.
Yeah, I think they're going to take tackle guard, and I think Connerly's the best option there. Baltimore next. I think this is another team that's going to take offensive line. And there are like 2 guys here that sort of stand out. It's Kelvin Banks and it's Tyler Booker.
Well, Banks is gone.
Oh, wait. Where did we take Banks? Did I completely lose my mind?
Took him early. Hold on. Let me see. Where did we take him? I think I had him. He went to the Niners. Or no.
Oh, right. Yeah, you took him to the Cowboys. Okay. So scratch that. They will not be taking Kelvin Banks because he will not be on the board. Which just makes this pick a little bit more easy. I think it's Tyler Booker. I think Tyler Booker's a great fit there. I think he's a very talented guard. Some of the athletic concerns are real, but from a strength and power standpoint, I mean, that guy is insane. And so, like, I think that he fits a lot of what they want to do.
Yeah. Plus, he's a Bama player, and Baltimore has proven they will always take the best available Bama player. So I don't think that's too far-fetched. I would not want Tyler Booker on the Dolphins. This is something Mr. S and I have talked about a lot. He says he is an unathletic fat ass, which fair enough.
Accurate.
So I don't think you can take him.
He's not a Dolphin, but he is certainly a very talented player.
Yeah. If the draft felt like this for the Lions, they have their choice of James Pierce or Mikael Williams. I think they'd take Pierce. Honestly, I think Pierce is a much better player than Mikael Williams, even though I wouldn't hate him going earlier either. I think Pierce is probably, outside of Abdul Carter, the best edge rusher, and I do like Green as well. He also has some some character concerns, but you pair him up against Aiden Hutchinson, you just let him cook. Like, that's a scary duo. And again, Lions are just going to take best player available. They've proven that since Dan Campbell's gotten there. It's how the Rams, I know their GM came from the Rams. I forget his name, but yeah, they're just going to take best player available at that point.
Oof. Washington next. Damn. I don't know what they're going to do. I wish I had a really good say on what they're going to do, because this is another team where they have a few needs and a few needs that could make a lot of sense. I'm going to go just because I think it's a guy who's going to go in the first round. I think that the Washington is a team that could absolutely just take best player available. For me, that's Mikael Williams. I think a fall is certainly possible for a guy like him, just with some of the edge talent in this class. But I think eventually a team's going to take him. And I think the team that ends up taking him is a team like Washington, or a team later on who doesn't need to worry as much about team needs and just needs to can take most talented player and fit him into what they want to do. Mikael Williams is incredibly talented. There is a lot of talent there. I don't think he's perfect. I think some of his pass rush moves could be figured out, but that is a super talented player who's going to be impactful in the NFL.
Yeah. He's kind of a tweener too, right? He's not really a pure edge. He's not really a D tackle yet. Could you see him being an option for the Dolphins? Maybe try and say, we're going to make you into a 3-tech or 5-tech.
Maybe, but I don't know if that is something. I think if he starts to fall in the second round, that's something you consider doing, but I don't know if they would take a guy like Mikael Williams in the first round and try and switch positions for him, right? That feels like something you'd more so do in the second round.
Yeah. If the draft fell like this, and this happened last time, Buffalo would take Matthew Golden.
I hate it.
You hate it, but it like I said,
we should have given them a punter.
We should have, but if you look at Matthew Golden, shout out to some of our friends with draft professors. I know they're big Bills fans. I hate that they're trying to claim Mr. Brightside as their own song, but Golden makes too much sense for what the Bills want to do. Yeah, really not much else to say. It just falls like this, and
I hate it. That's gross.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. But
that's gross.
What can you do? But you get Kansas City.
Oh boy. I thought that my kind of fun take would have been that the Chiefs would take him and try and add another playmaker. Now that he's off the board, they can't take him. So I'm going to shift and trying to think of how I want to shift this, because I think there's a few guys here that they could absolutely take. Maybe Luther Burden. I don't know if Luther Burden is what they would take, but
that'd be fun.
It would certainly be fun, but I think the needs fall a little bit differently for them than taking him so much so. I'm going to go offensive line because I think they desperately need offensive line help. And Gray Zabel's the best offensive lineman available. I think that he's going to end up going round one. And I think for a team like the Chiefs, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Chiefs have proven that they are willing to develop raw offensive line too. And Zabel's one that I think Dolphin fans have come resigned to the fact that he is not going to be available at 48. I would definitely consider maybe trying to trade up if he got to this point. Eagles, I think they would just go best available edge, which would be Donovan Iziraku. They don't really go, it says they need offensive line, but Eagles are just always just going to take the best edge available. So that's what we got. And let's see if we can move that to all teams. So that's what we have is our first round. Biggest surprise to me is Nick Emmanwori falling out of the first round.
Yeah, I still don't know what to think of Nick Emmanwori because I think he has a lot of solid athletic traits, and I think that he's a good fit in some schemes. But I don't know what his fit is in the NFL because I don't think he's a very refined player. And when you look at guys like that, right? Like I know that everyone's taking him or enjoying to take him for like the Dolphins because he would absolutely fit like what Anthony Weaver wants. And some people have comped him to Kyle Hamilton, and I see why, right? Like he plays a lot like Kyle Hamilton does, but to some degree, is that a pick that you're taking at 13 if he's not a refined player? Like Kyle Hamilton was a completely different beast in the sense that like when you watched Kyle Hamilton play football, you knew that he was going to be a really good player. And so like I don't know if that's the fit. And like is he a box safety? Is he a center field safety? Is he a slot corner? Or like what is he? And like I don't know what he is yet. And that's why it's challenging for me to try and predict where he stands because once you get like, I think later on in the first round, there will be a team who goes, the athletic traits, we can try and solve this.
Yep.
That stands out like a lot of what a team like Philadelphia would do. I don't think they would do it this year, but like it's a thing like Philadelphia does a lot, right? Where they take the sort of unproven raw athletic player and build him up.
Yep.
I could see him doing that, but like I just don't know where he falls. And I think there's a very good chance that him or Malachi Starks falls a little bit more than they should. And if I had to pick one to fall, I think the one who falls is going to be Memori.
Yeah. Now, our Twitter admin has asked me to do this. We're going to do one more mock. But this time we're just going to do a 7-round Dolphins, no trades.
Okay.
So we're just going to do Dolphins only. So let me go ahead and again share this. So 1 second here. And again, anybody who is doing mocks, stick to the model is a great resource. So give him all the love. So just so we see, Matthew Golden, like you said, goes to the Cowboys. Tet McMillan to the Niners. Kelvin Banks, Jalen Walker, Abdul Carter, Armand Membu, Ashton Genty. I think this is very close to what would happen. I'm not sure if I would say Shedeur Sanders to 3, but I think it's pretty
yeah.
accurate.
Again, like Will Johnson's the pick here. I think we should go a different way, though. I don't know if we should just take Will Johnson every single time. That feels boring.
It is boring. So let's have this topic. You're looking and Tyler Warren's there. Do you take him?
It would be so difficult for me to pass up on Tyler Warren just because of what he can do. I just think that they've addressed that tight end room enough with Jonnu Smith, with Pharaoh Brown, with Julian Hill. Like maybe you take one later on in the draft, but are you going to take one in round 1 when you have other needs? I struggle to think that they would do that unless they truly love Tyler Warren, the player. But
and they have met with him. They met with him during the combine, and
they have met with him. I don't really buy too much into like the top 30 visits. I think that's more so for guys you have questions about, not guys you love. I love Tyler Warren, man. I just truly fucking love Tyler Warren.
So,
but
chat, do we take Tyler Warren here? If anybody wants to give,
I think it'd be like Kenneth Grant is also another intriguing option, just because I see a lot of like what Kenneth Grant could do in this defense. Same reason why like we like Will Johnson, right?
I think he does. Shout out to Football Stats guy who did create this draft simulator. Yes, McDaniel has all the pool.
Yeah, like he would if they wanted one, he would take. I mean, they traded up for a running back last year. Like,
yeah, and
like I think if he liked
our coach will defer. The one time he didn't defer was Devin Achane because McDaniel wanted him in 2nd round, and we took Cam Smith.
And they should have.
Yeah. It would have to be either Johnson or Warren at this point. So I say just to give it a little fun, we just
let's have some fun. Let's take Tyler Warren. Let's see what we can do the rest of the draft.
Yeah. So we're just doing this quickly. So as we can see, we also have that. So if the draft fell like this, I'd be looking right here.
Again, I just don't love the athletic ability. I don't love the athletic fit in this. Like
The
the same
other
reason why we
name
don't like Tyler Booker.
is right here.
Who are the corners available?
So the corners. So Darian Porter is definitely someone that if
I
you
like
look at their
Darian
athletic
Porter.
profile,
I like Darian Porter a lot in this
yeah,
defense.
the question becomes he's a little older and he's not very experienced.
I think you need to take it to corner though. Like I think you have to. And can you keep deferring on corner in a draft like this, right? Like they need offensive line help, don't get me wrong. I don't think Embo's ready day one. I think he needs a year of development or 2 years
Yeah.
of development. Some of his technique stuff is so bad.
Yeah.
And like it's just not going to work against NFL guys. Jonah, don't even want to try to say the last name because I will butcher it. I just don't think he's athletic enough for this scheme. And to the same reason why like they probably wouldn't take Tyler Booker, same reason why I don't think they're going to take Jonah, right? It's just because I think they're going to value more athletic guys.
Okay. Darian Porter does fit the scheme, so like I said, we will go ahead. That is a big boy at corner too. For those who don't know,
6'3", like legit 6'2", 6'3", like that.
He's
Some
a
of the
wide
athletic.
receiver.
I don't think he's perfect, but I think that he would fit a lot of what they want to do.
Yeah. The only question I have there is he is so raw and he's going to have a lot on his shoulder, but I agree with you there.
All right.
So this is where it gets a little rough because then you go to IOL and to me, it kind of.
I think you could get one on day 3. I think I still look at that board. I think there's a few guys on day 3 that I like. I'm not too concerned about that. The question for me is, is this a place where you double down on corner or do you take defensive line?
I will say this for corner. Zoff Frazier, again, legit 6'3", 6'4", insanely athletic. He's 24 years old, though.
Yeah, I think I like Darian Porter more than I like Zoff Frazier.
And Noel Williams, ball hawk.
I'd like to see what we can get on day 3 at corner if we're going to take another corner. Who are the D linemen available? I think it's CJ West. CJ West fits a lot of what they want. And I think that like there's maybe some concerns about what he fits in because I don't know if he's a 0 tech, a 1 tech, or 3 tech, but like I want like his run defensibility is incredible. He anchors well against defense, like doubles, like some of his abilities in terms of understanding how to play the position is different. And that's a guy to me who thinks like feels like a no-brainer.
And he was recruited by Tom Allen, who I do have concerns with Allen as a coach and with his scheme, but his D line is going to hustle.
The one thing that he knows how to coach is D line and defense. Yeah. Not a lot of the offensive stuff, but that when he coaches a defense, he coaches the shit out of a defense. So I think that he fits a lot of what they want to do.
All righty. So into round 4. I know a lot of people like Logan Brown to potentially move inside. And he has been linked with us.
Maybe. Who are the other offensive linemen available?
So if you look at IOL, you got Dylan Fairchild.
I like Fairchild.
Who I do think is a starter right away. I think Jackson Slater is a starter right away too, even from Sacramento State. If you want to add in offensive tackles, you got Logan Brown. I do like Hollis Pierce and Chase Lump, but they're a little later on. But I think at this point you got to go Fairchild, no?
Fairchild or Brown. I think Fairchild's slightly better, but I would not be against either one of those.
Okay, so we'll go Fairchild.
Okay.
So just out of curiosity, go to safety because they have this. This is Caleb Branshaw is a guy I know a lot of Dolphin fans are becoming very familiar with. At safety, Malachi Moore is another one that people like. Now, I will also say this. I like what the limited stuff we saw from Patrick McMorris. I do think if we go safety, it's going to be later in the draft. So this is around the time I start thinking you'd look at it. Sebastian Castro does not fit the athletic profile a lot of people want, but I think he is a perfect safety for our scheme as well.
Are there still any corners available, or did we wait a little too long at corner?
Your boy.
Upton Stout. I do like Kobe Bryant. I like Justin Wally, the Minnesota guy. I think he's a guy who's picking up some steam here late. I wish I knew when their next pick was.
Yeah, well, we can say that. But just again, Upton Stout is a guy who visited us today. So we can actually look at our picks.
So we have 14 picks in between? No, more. I don't know how to add.
15
picks. I'm not against taking a safety here. I think you can go safety corner in these next 2 picks. Or you could go running back. I know that maybe you start looking at the running backs here. 2 in RJ Harvey, maybe.
We did have Ollie Gordon in.
Yeah, I don't like Ollie Gordon. I think he's too slow.
Every mock draft I've done usually ends up with us taking Damian Martinez, who Hurricane fans will know, or Devin Neal.
I do like Devin Neal in this offense. So maybe we wait on running back, because I still think there are a few running backs that I like.
Yep.
Safety is certainly intriguing, because I do think that there are a few safeties. Ransaw, Malachi Moore, I think would probably be the top 2 here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm down for either. I like Malachi Moore a lot. I think Ransaw is a very talented safety, and I think if you're taking one, this is where you would start to consider taking one.
Yep, and if it's like this, Greer tends to go with the big school. So, sorry, Mr. S, but Ransaw will not be the pick. It'll be Malachi Moore. And then you can still get a...
I'd take Kobe Bryant or Upton Stout here.
Yeah,
I'm down for either.
I will go Upton Stout because Kobe Bryant gets literally everybody drafts Kobe Bryant to the Dolphins. So we got to change it up a little bit. So
I could see him taking another offensive lineman. Could see him going running back.
Yeah. So with how the draft's gone, I think these two.
I like Lunt more than I like Holland Pierce. I think Holland Pierce is just too raw.
Yeah, I could see a team taking a flyer on Pierce. Lunt is another guy. Again, Mason Johnstone, our friend. This is his guy. I think he is someone you can definitely develop. I know even Kentley Platt has said that Chase Lunt is a guy he would not be shocked to see starting day 1 in the NFL. I would say this is a guy that Dolphin fans, especially if you do mock drafts, should be familiar with, because I think when you get to this point, this is someone we should be looking at. I'll go Chase Lunt, because I would definitely say he's become one of my guys.
Yeah, I think Lunt is a solid pick for where they're at and what they need.
So what are we at? We're in
the 7th
round. So our 3 7ths.
I still like some of the running backs on the board. That's insane. This is such a good running back.
This is Raheem Sanders is one I love. Jaden, I could see Mike McDaniel loving Jaden Blue too.
I could see Khalil Mullins being the pick just as a Michigan guy.
I'm a Michigan guy, and I can't see us taking Khalil.
I think Mullins is the one you take. I think the other one, who we will not name.
Donovan Edwards is not good. Sorry, everybody. I said,
I don't know. He was on the College Football 25 video game cover. He has to be good.
Well, he can't. He has no vision, and he can't break tackles. I will put it that way.
Who are some of the edge rushers? I don't think it's entirely out of the question that they take one. I just don't love the guys here.
At this point, you're gambling on Rass. Our resident Rass hole, Mr. S, will say that too. Colin Oliver is a big Rass guy.
I think he had some injury problems last year, though, didn't he?
I just don't know enough about. I don't know enough about Big 12 defenders.
I really like Elijah Ponder. I think I would take Elijah Ponder with the last 7th round pick.
I know a lot of people like him as the late.
I'm not taking him before the last 7th round pick, though. I'm not running to the table. What about receiver?
This receiving class sucks. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm just wondering if maybe someone has fallen that I like.
No. Oh, hold on. Let me give it to the edges.
I like Ricky White. That's about it.
That's about it. Like I said, like if you can't get Nash from San Jose State or Horton from Colorado State or Williams from Wazoo, I'd be down taking Ricky White.
Yeah, I
Like,
like Ricky White a lot.
yeah,
And I think
6'1".
worst case, he's a special teamer, and he's a really good special teamer. And like
Yeah.
7th round, if you get a guy who's an elite special teamer, I think I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I have no issues with like him just being a special teamer.
Yeah. So go ahead and take Ricky White to running back. And
I'm down for Rocket Sanders. I know you like him. I have not watched a lot of him.
yeah,
But I do like some of the stuff that he has. And I think that he has a really good chance of making a 53-man roster.
yeah, no, I agree with that. All right. And then I think at this point, like if you go edge, you go Rass, and Elijah Ponder's a guy a lot of people like late. So
I think like maybe you go edge or linebacker here. Maybe you take, I don't know. Like I think you probably wait a little too long to take a backup quarterback. And I don't even know if you want to at this point.
I mean, you're probably looking at Curtis Rourke, sure.
None of these guys, I don't love any of these guys.
No.
Like maybe Max Brosmer, but
yeah, that's.
then I'm like,
I would honestly say, look, I'll say this, and it's easy to dunk on him, but we drafted Skylar Thompson, and he was undraftable.
Yeah, like I don't think you're going to take a quarterback at this point. I think you'd sign one maybe. Like maybe you sign a KJ Jefferson or a Peyton Thorne or like someone, try and see if they can make the roster. I don't think you're going to draft one.
If you look at linebacker before we go there, you're usually looking at Nick Martin, who I know Mr. S loves, and Teddy.
I like Teddy Buchanan. I really do like Buchanan. Carson Bruner a little bit lower on the board. I like him. Kane Medrano. I think he's actually going to go a lot higher than that.
I know a lot of people like Shane Dolak out of Buffalo.
I think he's fine. I think Sean Dolak's fine. I don't think he's anything special. I kind of like a lot of the linebackers still on the board. Even like Chandler Martin going really low, like barely even on this list. I'm down for either Ponder or like Carson Bruner or Teddy Buchanan. I'm down for any of those. I think all those guys are talented football players.
Yeah, let's go Ponder.
Ponder's a fun one because he can play kind of everywhere. Another one of those versatile guys.
Yeah. So go ahead. We got a B+.
They really did not like the 7th round picks.
Which,
honestly, like, whatever.
I've learned after round 4, it just becomes who's on your board, who do you want to develop. But if we came around with this, I will say that like it is really tough just seeing how the board falls after how the cornerback falls if we miss on one of those top 2 guys in round 1. Just how unsure
it's so difficult once you get past those first round corners that like maybe you would like take a Jacob Parrish and hope that he can play outside, but I don't even know if you would do that. Like,
yeah,
I think,
but I do think if you walk away from the draft with the draft with this, you're happy.
I'd be ecstatic. I think Darian Porter, he would not be the flashiest name. I think he'd be fun. I think that like CJ West is a day 1 starter somewhere. And I think he's a guy who would have to figure out where he starts, but I think he starts somewhere. And then I think day 3, you got high upside guys who could be something, right? Like, I think Upton Stout's going to start at nickel, which if you get a starting nickel in the 5th round, you get a starting nickel. Like, I'm down for a starting nickel in the 5th round. Chase Lunt is another guy who I really like, but like Fairchild, I think is probably a starter. I just don't think he's anything special. I think he's just a solid starter, which
we need.
The Dolphins have not had enough solid starters at offensive line. So if you get 1 or 2 solid starters at offensive line, man, that's enough for me. I will not complain about that whatsoever.
Yeah. So that was fun. Again, stick to the model. If you haven't been using it, definitely use it. It is, like I said, one of the better simulators that I've used, and it actually has an up-to-date player ranking, so you're not ending up with like 4 first-round picks as your like top 4 picks, which is very nice. But yeah, so Kev, we have gone for almost 90 minutes.
I'm shocked.
I am shocked.
Feels like it's been like 45 minutes.
Yeah. But yeah. Before I let you go, since taking out, and I always appreciate your time, but what are you looking forward to the most with the draft next week?
Looking forward to see who the Dolphins take outside of the first round, because I think that's going to tell a lot of where they're heading. If they go out of that first round and they go like round 2, they go corner again, I think you're seeing a situation where Jalen Ramsey's not on the roster. If they go wide receiver early, which I don't think is completely off the table, I think they may have a trade for Tyreek Hill. But
yeah,
I think that like the second or third round is going to tell you a lot about where they think this team is heading and what they need to upgrade. The first round too, obviously, but like I think once you get past that first round, you're going to see a lot of where they think this team is.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to having fun because it just feels like the Dolphins haven't been fun like at all this year.
I'm down to have some young players who I'm just like excited to watch because
like even last year, like Chop Robinson and Patrick Paul were so divisive. I don't think anybody was excited, like universally excited, until we drafted Malik Washington in the 6th round. So
I'm excited to have a few more young players who are like actually impactful because
so
I think that you have not had enough of those, frankly, over the years. Like you've had so many of your day 3 guys who just have not been impactful. I'm excited to have some impactful players on day 3.
I'm excited to have impactful players in day 2. We haven't had one of those in a while either.
Frankly,
Patrick Paul, Cam Smith, and Channing Tindall, who is still on this team.
Channing Tindall's still on this team because, man, you can have 90 players in the offseason.
Yeah. And you can count on one hand how many defensive snaps he's had in his actual NFL career.
You wouldn't even need a hand to count how many defensive snaps he had last year, I think.
No, you would not. Achan too, fair. I forgot about Achan.
Yeah. I also forgot about it. I keep forgetting Achan was like I keep thinking like Achan was like a 4th round pick for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They took him in the 2nd.
But all righty, everybody. We are gonna end this day. Definitely follow Kev at Rivals Fielder. Jordan will be back next week. We're going to do a couple more mocks. If anybody who's there wants to join us and talk Dolphins draft or even just draft in general, let us know. We'll have you on next week. Otherwise, have a great weekend. If you celebrate the holiday, enjoy the holiday with your family. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night, everybody.